And hello, how are you? This is Trudy, and I am here. We're transitioning over from our other page, the 21st Century Watchman, and we are here today with our segment entitled Money Matters Mondays. And Money Matters Mondays is our forum or platform that we're using to educate God's people about the handling and the concerns of money and what God intended for us to actually have in dealing with money. Money is very prevalent. That's not the problem. It's just
Mhm.
that we need to be able to know how to use money effectively and to honor God with our money and how we use it and being good stewards with the money. So, this is what Money Matters is all about. And what I do is try to bring you information that's helpful in assisting you in managing your money. Um, we have been on the platform on Facebook for a while, so we're going to go and I'm going to just do kind of a recap of what we actually have been doing. Good evening, Sister Felicia. Thanks for joining me. We have talked about the basics of budgets, what budgets are, why they are necessary and why they are necessary because it gives us a full view of what we have, our asset base, how to build our assets, um, to look at our expenses, to look at and recognize, are we frivolously spending our money or, are we frugal savers or just what are we doing with what we're being blessed with? So, what we talked about was the 50-30-20 rule. And what that is just like a pie chart almost. And it's just like you had a whole pie and you would actually look at dissecting it into chunks. So if we looked at overall where our money came in, we have an entire pie. And in that pie, we would spend half of the pie, which would be 50%, basically on all of our necessities. Now, when we talk about those have to have necessities, one of the things that we always have to remember are the principles that to survive, we need shelter, we need heat, and we need food. So, all those things are encapsulated in that 50%. Then we look at the 30%. The 30% is contained where we're looking at the pie again now. So we have about this much now. So the 30% is actually those things that we would consider wants. They're not necessarily a necessity, but they're a want or things that you feel comfortable with. Those are the things that fall in the 30 percentile. Then we have the 20 percentile, which is a smaller slice. And those are the things that we do to save, where we develop emergency funds and different things like that. Um, Things that we're going to put away for a rainy day, or things that are long term off. Like if we were going to say when a child is born and we're going to save for college, say for instance. So we use that 20% to actually stock money away. And by the time that they're ready to actually start college, you have a bigger contribution to give to that child to start off with. So that is the 50-30-20 rule. And then we went on and we talked about um, when you're using that methodology, understanding how you're spending your money. What we find is that most of the time we live in a society that paper money is really not exchanged that much. Everybody is so used to just swiping a card, swiping a card, swiping a card. But in that, we lose the accountability of keeping track of what we're spending. So, what usually happens is that we just keep swiping, swiping, swiping. And most people don't even notice it until you get that little notice that say, oh, well, you didn't have enough money, but we paid for it for you. NSF fees eat up your money, just gobble, gobble, gobble. You might have a $5 charge, but it costs you maybe $32 to pay for a $5 charge. And, so that just starts to gobble, gobble, gobble. And if you're not paying attention, you will see that they've paid, let's say, $100, but you've ended up paying almost $200 for them paying for the $100 because all of the little bitty transactions you were doing the bank was making money every time that you didn't have enough money, and they were willing to front you the money so that the bill would be paid. So we have to be careful of those type things, being cognizant of our money, how it is actually being spent. Then we talked about setting goals. In budgeting, is very wise to set goals for yourself. Um, Whether it's saving goals, or you're trying to save for a vacation, or you're trying to save for uh, uh, Christmas shopping, whatever you're doing, it's always to make sure that you can look at your overall budget and see where you can pull funds from and how are you handling your money. One of the things that I had instructed the people that were actually following when we were over on the Facebook platform was to actually get your bank statements. Get your bank statements because you want to look at your bank statements to tell exactly how you're spending your funds. A lot of us are not, we don't even look at them. They come in, as long as you could keep spending, that's all you care about. But we can't continue to live frivolously like this because there's going to come a time and place that we're going to need to know what we have and what we can actually spend and what we have to hold on to. Because it says a wise man always leaves an inheritance for his children. So these are biblical terms. These are things that we're just not pulling out. God is actually telling us what we should be doing and to be wise in all that we get, in all of our getting, that we be wise with it. So we're not going to frivolously spend our money. So the instruction was to take your bank statements, and when you look at your bank statement, analyze every single line. What are you paying for? Now, when you do that, if you recognize that there is a habit going on or a trend actually happening with your bank statements, then you actually have to go and you have to take a look at that trend. I always encourage everybody to take highlighters and actually highlight your bank statement. Go and sometimes you go through, maybe you use the 50/30/20 rule here. So everything that you're going to have in um, your 50%, let's say that you're highlighting it in yellow, and then everything that is going to um, be in your 20%, which is your savings, everything that you're going to put in pink. But all your 30s, you're going to put in green. And so we know that the 50s are what we have to have. Those are what we need to survive. But when we start to see that green highlighter, and we need to go in and look at those things in depth and say, okay, how many times do I go to Starbucks every day? How many times do I eat out at lunch every day? How many times do I eat out, period, in a week? So that you can get a handle on these things, so that you have a visual picture, that you know already that these are the things that I have to curb these things. I need to change these things. These things need to go in another category or be eliminated completely. If you're talking about um, in the green category where we say these are our wants, do you want to eat ice cream every day? No. The flip side of that is if you eat ice cream every day, you're going to gain weight and you're going to be broke. Because I looked at the price of ice cream at Baskin Robbins the other day, and that was a want I had. And I looked at it because I would have to get it through Uber. So as I looked at it, it was going to cost me $19 for a quart of ice cream. And I had to sit there and say, now, where does this make any kind of common sense that I'm going to pay that much money for a quart of ice cream? Not a half gallon, not a gallon, but a quart of ice cream. So that was a want I had. Now, if I was foolish enough to do that because that's what I wanted, then I would have to figure out what else can I cut off or negotiate throughout this week to say that I can't spend anything else because I've wasted $21 just getting some ice cream. That's only going to last me maybe, an hour or so as I eat it. It's just too much. These are the things that we have to realize in our wants, because before, what happens is that because we're sliding our cards, we're not thinking about it. But when we get the bank statements, that is when we can actually take a whole picture look at how your money is going out. And it will be something that will give you a serious reality check. Because if you keep going, okay, I went to McDonald's, I went to Chick-fil-A, I went to Starbucks, or I went to the mall, and it's just like, what are all these things that you're doing? Are they necessary? So this is one of the pieces or homework that everyone was given to actually take care of. And that was the reason why, so that we can develop systems so that we're on top of what's going on and we're not waiting until we get an NSF fee to tell us that we don't have any more money. You're going to stay on top of those things. And the thing about it is that the not knowing is worse than the knowing. So you should be able to keep a handle on your finances, because someone could actually be taking money from you. And if you don't pay attention to your bank statements, you'll never know. Like, there, we do these things, we sign up for things and we forget about it, or we no longer need them or use them, but we're constantly getting charged for them. I had a charge that comes out annually that I had forgotten about. And when it came out, it was some kind of property search thing I was doing, and it's $29 a year. Well, okay, no big deal, $29. But as I'm going through my budget, because as I'm giving you information, I'm doing the same thing for my own self. That was $29 that I did not expect to spend out. So when you look and you develop your budget, anything that comes against your budget that's unexpected decreases what you actually have available to spend. So that's one of the things why it's so necessary to go and review your statements. I don't care if you get them by paper or digitally. You need to make sure that you pay attention. Then those are the things that I call money suckers. The money suckers are those things that we forget about, subscriptions and different little things we sign up for. They tell us trials. You sign up for $1, and if at 7 days it goes to the normal price, and you forget about it because you got the information you wanted at a buck and you forgot about it, and then now it's $49 a year or it's $20 a month. So those things you have to look for. Also, we talked about another budgeting concept, which was the envelope budget concept, where you actually take envelopes and you label them out for all of your necessities. So, if you're paying rent or you're paying mortgage, you're paying a car note, your normal housing bills, your gas, your lights, your water, those things like that, your grocery, then you always make one for yourself, which would be your fund envelope, a savings envelope. And what you do is when you get paid, that we're talking about, not your gross, because a lot of people say, well, I gross this much, meaning that I bring in all of this. But you have to remember that you pay um, a percentage of your income is lost because of all of the different taxes that we pay. So the net amount is what you're actually going to budget off of. Okay. So your net that you're actually receiving, you're going to budget off of that amount. And when you actually budget off of that amount, with those envelopes, you take that money, you actually take cash and you put it in each envelope. Some people do it half and half because they get paid twice a month or bi-monthly. So at one part of the month, they put half in there. And when they get the next paycheck, they put the remaining half to make up the bills so they're able to pay those bills. Now, we talked about that. That's a very disciplined approach. It takes a lot of time because some people are more hands-on people. So in order for it to be real for them, they have to go through the process to do that. And it takes a lot of effort to keep up with that. And there's the good side of it, the con of it is that you're you've got a lot of money around. And every time that you go somewhere, if you have your fund money or certain expense money, that you're going to have it on your person, because you're not allowed to use outside money like your cards or anything like that. You have to use what's contained in your envelope. So, the pro of it is that it gives you great discipline, but the con of it is that the exposure of having a lot of cash on you, and people actually being diligent enough to keep up with it. Because see, when you get, say, for instance, in your fund money, if you are addicted to, let's say, Chick-fil-A, every day you want to go and have one of those lemonades. So the cost of that lemonade has to come out of that fund money, and that's the only place that you have funds available to get it out. Now, so what you have to do is continue to deduct, deduct, deduct. The reason for the deductions is so that you can have a visual cue that this is getting smaller, the number is getting smaller, the number. So it's almost like a stop measure so that you don't continue to spend beyond, because it wakes you up and it says, this is all the money that I have either for the week, for 2 weeks, or for a month. So it helps keep you in cue and sync of how the money is actually moving. Another way that we can actually take care of our budgets is making sure that whatever we make, God has always asked for a tenth of our earning before anything is ever done. And once we have to make sure that we include that in our budgets. Some people say, well, I don't make enough. You don't make enough without him. Trust me, because if you go and you try not to do what's right or what he's asked you for, that things will come up and all of your money will be gone. You'll be like, how did this happen? So God keeps his word, says he keeps the devourer from your funds. So I truly believe that. Now, that is my belief. You don't have to believe as I do, but that is my belief, that it is very important to make that a part of your normal budgeting. And I would say that that goes into my 50% that I have to make sure, um, you know, that's just me. But you do that, and I have to say that because that is a biblical principle that is actually done. Okay? So we talked about the 50, 30, 20. We talked about the envelope. We talked about the goal setting, what you do, how you want to see yourself. Make plans for yourself. When you fail to plan, you plan to fail. That is an old adage that has gone around, but it has so much truth and relevancy in it. Is that if we don't plan for things, we won't be prepared for things to come. So, just like right now, we have gas that took off, and gas almost became a car note for people every month. But, some people were able to absorb it, others were struggling with it. But neither is right or wrong, but what we have to learn to do, that when we're aware of those things and how they're hitting our particular budgets, we learn to modify. So budgeting actually makes you recognize how you're doing things. So if you understand that, like with the gas being higher, well, you know that you can't make 6 trips just all zigzagging across town. Then you're more aware of what's going on and you're more calculated in your going. So you try to do as many things that you can in line in a certain radius so that you can save money. And then you start to evaluate things. What do I need to get? What don't I need to get? If I can get it online and I don't have to pay for delivery, I'm just paying for taxes. Is it cheaper for me to do it this way? Or is it cheaper for me to drive? These are the type of things that when you have a budgeting mindset, you start to think about being frugal. Because when you are frugal, that means that that extra that you save is not for you to go and splurge on, but it actually goes into your savings or investment portion, because those are the things that you were blessed with and they were overflow and you saved, and you hadn't anticipated having it anyway. So you put them away. You put those things away. And when you take that particular approach about things, you find out that when you go back and you start looking at your savings starts to quickly multiply. What I told you last week when we were over on the other platform on Facebook, I gave you a few companies, banking companies. A lot of those were online. Some of those are brick and mortar. When I say brick and mortar, that means that there's physical buildings that you can actually go to, but they were paying higher amounts on their savings accounts. And it was very worthwhile trying to actually get to these people because a lot of them did not have a lot of front load fees. And what I mean when I say front load fees, that's actually you have to have so much money in order to get something to, or to get the particular rate. Most of their front loads were zero minimum balance. They didn't ask for those things. Some did ask for direct deposits, but what they were doing were giving you percentages like 4%, 3.375, 3.5%, 3.75. So these were much higher than our regular retail banks were giving us. So one that I can remember off the top was PNC Bank that was giving 4%. SoFi was giving in the high 3%. Um, what else did we have? SoFi, PNC. Um, there are a few more that were out there, but all the information that I share with you guys is for your own knowledge. And I always advise to do your own homework and do your own research. I give resources, but it's up to you to actually go and do the research to make sure that you're comfortable with the information that's out there. And you're never ever jumping into anything without doing some type of research on your own. Um, One of the other things that we talked about, as I told you, that we're going through a review because we're on this new platform, and I want to make sure that everybody gets to catch up to where we are. Revisiting our budget. Once that we make our budgets, that it's always good to set a time that you're going to revisit that budget. So, say for instance, that maybe quarterly you revisit your budget, or every 6 months if you know things are staying the same but you want to see how you've been able to curb your spending, what you've been able to actually put into savings, or even some of your regular hardwire, which would be those 50% or your essential bills. How have they uh, either came down or have they increased? What happens? Because this is why you need to re-examine it to see how you need to make other adjustments in your budget to make sure that you stay on track. So we always talked about that. Um, let's see, what else did we talk about? We talked about always, one thing I must say, always that when we meet on Mondays, make sure that you're bringing a notebook so that you can jot down some things that maybe you've heard that maybe sparks your interest that you can actually look into. I advised everybody to start a spending guide to track how much they were spending on a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis to make sure that they're aware of everything that's going on. Then we also talked about debit repay, or excuse me, debt repay, and all the debts that we actually have, and understanding how to pay through pay cycles. Um, we talked a little bit about credit. Next month in February, we will be going more in depth about credit and payments and how it affects all of us and what credit actually is. Um, and what we look like. What is our paperweight? You know, we have to know what our paperweight is because you have to know what people are saying about you. Otherwise, you won't understand why you're being denied or why you're being given higher rates for certain things because you don't know what this paper is saying about you. And this gives you the opportunity to go in and to correct errors and to actually give yourself a better standpoint as far as your paperweight. When I say paperweight, that's referring more so to your FICO scores. So we talked about major uh, credit repositories, which are Equifax, Experience, and TransUnion. Those are the top three that people recognize. But understand there are hundreds behind the scene that actually report on different aspects of who you are. So it's not just those, but we will learn how to take a look at those things and challenge the errors and get those things taken care of. Um, every particular entity that you go to, they sometimes have their own reporting systems that they depend on a lot more. I know those that are looking at mortgages, they just think, oh, well, they just use Equifax. Well, they use CoreLogics as well. So there are a couple of things that go on with that, but we'll deal with all that next month and start to dive in deep into the segments on those so that we're aware of what to look for and to make sure that when we go and we present ourselves to lenders, that we know that we're worthy when we come in and we're not scoffing and just begging them to give us something, but can stand and say, no, we want premium rates because I'm bringing you premium credit and premium credit history so you can see my capacity and my ability of repayment back to you and not just be sitting up here. You know, we've been at a point that people are just so happy that people will give them things, but they don't realize how much they're being taken advantage of because we'll have, like, we're coming up to tax season, right? Now, there'll be so many cars sold during tax season, but ask me 6 months later how many of those cars will still be with them because they're so excited about getting the cars, but they're not looking at that they're charging them, 19, 22% to have the car. Now, when you want a car and you're financing, oh, it sounds great. But until you start looking at those payments that you're going to make, you're making payments generally on a used car more than you would on a new car. Why? Because your credit is not as such that would actually allow you to be in a premier status where you would qualify for maybe a 7% auto loan versus someone that's going to give you 29%. And you see that very often. You see it really, really often, but people don't think about that. They just see the goal. It's just like the shiny ball. I want it, I want it, I want it. But they don't think about the overall impact. So we want to make sure that when we're presenting ourselves for whatever financially, that we're in the right standing. And we talked about debt repay, how to pay your debts back. Um, looking at the dates, understanding your closing dates, your statement dates. We talked about that before earlier in the month, but as we go forward in the credit portion, we will dive deeper into that so you have a full understanding of exactly what is it that you're handling. Because most of us get exposed to credit, like if you don't start with credit in college, because college campuses are notorious for this, that they come out and they have all the bankers out there and they start you off with credit cards. And most people are too immature because they haven't had that exposure to it to understand to how to responsibly handle those things. So they start to get themselves in a whirl of debt before they even get started, besides the student loans and all those other things that they already have. But then they bog themselves down in this credit part. And it's like this eternal spiral that they just can't get out of because no matter what they do, they still are bogged down in debt. And then just understanding, being mature about it, understanding what it is, how to handle it correctly, and making sure that you don't get over your head with it. And there it goes back to those that want and that need, how to use those things. And how to pay them back effectively, understanding that paying the minimum amount is not doing anything for you because as we go back and we talked a little bit about checking out what your interest rate is so that you can see how much of your money is actually going towards the principal balance versus all of it being eaten up by the interest rate. Because remember this, banks and lenders are in it for the interest. That is what makes them tick. The interest tells them how much money are they guaranteed to make off of you from lending you a specific amount of money. Because they're going to get the money back that they lent you, but because of the time it takes you to repay it, they get interest, 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 interest. And that's why a lot of times when people take a look at um, their finance statements when you're financing a car or whatever, you'll see that the car was 30,000, but in 5 years, you're going to pay like $46,000 for a car. Why? Because why would they've extended your credit and the use of their money based on an interest rate. You're going to do this for so long. And for those 7 years that they have that money that they can't get to use that money with anybody else because you've locked it up. So for that, they're going to charge you interest every month. Chump, 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 chump. But at the end of it, look how much they've won because they've gotten their initial investment plus all of your the interest, and you walk away with the car or whatever other asset that you actually wanted to obtain. But the banks and the creditors never lose. They never lose. So we'll understand how to do that. We'll understand how to uh, look at our paychecks, how we have things allotted. Um, I'm planning on trying to see about getting uh, someone on that will give us some investment guidance, not investment know-how, but investment guidance, um, to actually give us some overviews of things that actually grow our monies or our investments quicker. Different vehicles. We have things that we know already, like stocks. We have governmental stocks that grow really, really slow, but they're steady. So that's why sometimes we find that if our stock markets are very volatile, then that's the safe place to be. And then if we go into that we're in a different type of market where there are different things to invest your money in. So that is what we're planning on doing and bringing. I've asked everybody to get their credit report. There's a free credit report, annualcreditreport.com. You get it absolutely free once a year. So you can do that. Another company that I recommended was Credit IQ. Credit IQ gives you all three, gives you credit scores. And I know there are others out there like Credit Karma and things like that, but these are a little more hardcore because it gets you closer to the real reports and actually ranks you a lot better. It is a subscription um, company. I am not an affiliate or I don't get anything for recommending these things, but these are just resources that I know of that happen to prove prudent to have because of the valuable information that they actually bring out. And the freecreditreport.com, it is free to everyone. You can Google it, you can find it. It doesn't take long for you to actually get your report, and it gives you a place to start. It is very important that you have to know what others are saying about you on paper. Okay. One of the newest reads that I'm reading, and I wanted to share everybody, this is the psychology of money. And one of the things about money as we go through, that's the psychology of money, and it's by Morgan Housel, Housel. And it's actually contained timeless lessons on wealth, greed, and happiness. So, we have to make sure that we keep our minds elevated as we go into, you know, learning new things, that we have to grow different mindsets also. So, managing your mindset as you're going through learning to manage money matters is very important. It is vital to your existence because you have to come out of what, when you were uninformed, and come into an informed mindset in order to be able to handle all the things that are coming to you or might become available to you. Because if you stay in the same way or the same frame where you haven't developed budgets, then when you do get a windfall or a blessing or a gift like that, you'll run through it. You won't think of it that, okay, I was blessed with this. This is what I need to put away for this. This needs to go here. This needs to go there. Otherwise, you're like, oh, free money, and you'll spend it all. One of the things that we talked about a little bit too is that we have to be aware of financial indicators. One of the things that is going through, we talked about in our beginning, is about looking at uh, things that affect us. You know, what we talked about before was that when they had all of the in Florida, we had all the storms and the floodings and different things like that. And, we talked about what would be the effect. And you would say, okay, well, why are we doing that when we're talking about money matters? Well, it does matter because it will affect your money. So, because of the damage that was done to the crops, the damage that were done to the bees, you will lose some of those things. And in the return part of it is that we're going to pay higher prices for orange juice. We're going to pay higher prices for honey. We're going to pay higher prices for regular oranges, any type of citrus type fruit that was being produced in Florida. So these are the things that let you know that so that you can prepare for these things as you start to see them happening. Now, we recently here in California had massive storms that actually happened in northern and central California. Well, guess what? California is the top producer of almonds. So, all of the health conscious people, they drink almond milk, they have almond bars, they have almond butter. And then in other countries, especially I think it's um, in China, where that's one of our major exports, or Japan, one of the two. But it's an Asian country. That is a huge export for us, that there's a huge market for that. But guess what? The crops that actually have been affected by it, guess what? What are we going to do with them? Asparagus, lettuce, strawberries, all these things. And here's the deal, that once, because the flood water came out and there was this massive flood and all the runoff and everything like that, because that happened, any of that water that touched any of the vegetation, any of the things that were growing, are not for human consumption now. So we logically lost crop that we normally farm on multiple harvest systems here in California. So we are going to see increases in food again. So when we talk about budgeting and our hard costs are 50%, now we might have to allot more money into our food section, and we have to take from our budget somewhere else, really like that 30%, to offset what's going to happen in our 50%. So you always need to have a watchful eye in what's going on in the marketplace, how it will actually affect you. A lot of people just didn't think about that. Oh, it just rained. Oh, everybody's. But as soon as storm water, they consider it contaminated water, hits food, it is no longer available for human consumption. They could feed it to the animals and things like that, but for human consumption, because of the levels of bacteria and everything else that the rainwater carries and things like that, it's no longer available. So then we create another shortage. And when you have another shortage, those that are available to sell to the marketplace, they will get it out there, but they will charge us a much higher price. So you see how it's all interrelated and all intertwined. So it's very important that we pay attention to everything about what's going on around us. So um, let's see what's in the chat. Got to order. Okay, order yours. Order yours. Make sure you order it. Make sure you order it because it's going to be crucial that when we start to go into February, so that we can actually take a look at the reports, and I'll teach you guys how to go through and identify the errors that are in there. That sometimes they're slight errors, but just errors can make your credit score drop 5, 10, 15 points. So you need all the points that you get so that when you're actually ready to present yourself to lenders or creditors, that you're presented in the best light. And the that you want to make sure that you stay in the 700s. That always will lead you to premier pricing. So that is the goal. That is a goal that you could say set. If you're not there, that's okay. It's okay. It doesn't matter. It's just as long as we are aware of where we are and that we move and press towards the mark. We keep pressing towards the mark. And so that is why I just keep digging on the credit report that we want to make sure that we get those things. And then we'll go through all the basics, how to handle our credit, how to pay our bills, how to make sure that we're doing all the things that are necessary for us to be able to get ahead in life. I, over my past career, have learned a lot of information, and I thank God for a platform now to be able to share the things that I know and to help others because that is what we're supposed to do. That is my gospel that I get to share. That is my gift that God has given me, that He's given me to share, not only to be able to share His word, but actually to share practical processes and giving us live examples of how we can do these things and we can live according to how God intended for us to live and not always be behind the eight ball, waiting for people just to give us things. Okay. So make sure you bring a friend, tell a friend, especially when we get ready to start in February, because it's going to be action packed. Thank you so very much for joining me tonight. If there's any questions that we might have in the chat. Mhm. All right. If not, everybody have a wonderful evening. I will see you again on Money Matters Mondays next week. And make sure that we've gone through our overview. So we'll go through a few more things to close out our budgeting series. And we will be looking to approach our credit series. Okay. God bless. Have a good evening.